And we're live. Excellent. Wonderful. Here we are today. Today is Groundhog's Day. I really hope that this generation of students has seen the movie Groundhog's Day. It would be very sad if you guys had not seen it. Groundhog's Day is a classic film from 1993, starring Bill Murray. Sorry. It's a great movie. It says I have like 3 and 4 people viewing this thing at once. I'm going to give people a minute to kind of get in, only because, like, I don't know, people are still waking up or something. I had posted a reminder yesterday. I had posted that reminder. Where's my camera here? Oh, is my camera down? Oh no, my webcam camera's down. Let me see if I can redo the webcam. Webcam. Change that webcam to that. There it goes. There I am. Oh, I lost it. Come on, activate. Yes. And there I am in the corner right there. Wunderbar. There you go. Thank you. Goodness. I was just wondering, because it's like, you know, it's a great movie. And also, it's Groundhog's Day. That's my point. Anywho, welcome back, everyone. The 4 people who are here. Out of a class of, I don't even know how many people. I mean, yeah, it's like 10. We'll figure the chunk out. Couple of reminders before we move forward. Number 1, and I'm going to remind people before the end of the stream, of course, but please leave a comment. If you haven't already, please leave a comment in the live chat so that I have a record as to who is here. That would be absolutely wonderful for me. Number 2, if you have not joined the Google Classroom just yet, if you have not joined it yet, I'm going to need you to join that Google Classroom. In fact, I can probably, I think I can paste and paste. There we go. That link right there, if you haven't joined the Google Classroom, I believe that link that I just posted in the chat should work as an invitation link. Although, like, most people have already joined the Google Classroom. I'm just taking a look at it right now. There are just a few people who have not yet. So that's kind of where we're at. And here we are again. Well, we started class last Friday, where I had 2 people in the classroom, and then everyone else was online. But we did what we could with the time that we had, and now we've been home for 2 straight days. I don't know. It's one of those weird things. But, c'est la vie, such is life, and well, we're going to get started regardless. So, my intention for today is not to keep you for the entire time. I really try not to do that on days like today, because there's no, official bell schedule. Technically, I have you from 7:20 to 8:20, but I would like to get done a chunk of what I would like to do. Unfortunately, a lot of my materials are still in my classroom. I've been able to live stream because I have the equipment to do so. I have my Chromebook simply because I bring that home every weekend, but I don't have a lot of my physical materials to do things, which is fine. I can still get by with what I have. And we'll see what happens. So, still just the 4 of you guys. Alright, well, I'm going to get started. Let's see where this thing kind of takes us. Again, as always, if you have a question, leave it in the chat. That would be fantastic. And we'll go from there. So today is, as we said, Groundhog's Day. 2-2-21. Nice. It'll be 2-2-22 next year. Anyway, I'm going to call this voting methods continued. Just as a reminder, for those who may not remember, discrete math is typically the study of things that are countable. It's not really dealing with algebraic equations and graphing them, or dealing with geometric shapes and things of that nature. I mean, it can have some geometry to it, which we'll get into later in the semester, but discrete math is really the act of the countable. For example, we've been working with voting methods and counting votes and what's a fair way of counting things. Eventually, we're going to be getting into different things like fair division. We're going to be getting into some interesting things of the Fibonacci sequence. Eventually, we'll get to that kind of thing. I'm just trying to find the name of one specific thing before I move forward. But you know what? No, I'll find that name later. There we go. Last class, we talked about the voting of Podunk, Nebraska, in which 37 people went to go vote on their mayor. Now, I'm just going to recopy this because, I don't have the copy of my notes from last time, so I'm just going to recopy the information that I had last time. But I showed you guys the preference schedule for voting in Podunk, Nebraska. And when you do a preference ballot, you don't just vote for who you want to win the election. You rank the candidates first, second, third, and fourth. And each candidate would then, therefore, receive a first place ballot, second place ballot, third place ballot, etc. And you have a lot more options for counting votes, which is great. So 14 people turned in a ballot that looked like this for Alice, Boris, Chris, and Dave. 10 people turned in a ballot that looked like this. 8 people turned in a ballot that looked like this. 4 people turned in the following ballot. And 1 person turned in this ballot. Now, for Alice, Boris, Chris, and Dave, what we talked about last time was that if it was just one vote, one person, meaning you only vote for who you want to win, and that's that. Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting a delivery of coffee at the moment.
Sorry.
So wonderful. Thank you. No, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I just got an awesome delivery of coffee, so y'all can be jealous. Anyway, so Alice, if it's one vote, one person, she goes away winning. There are 37 votes, but Alice received 14 first-place votes. No one else received that many first-place votes. Chris got 11 first-place votes. Dave got 8. Boris got 4. Alice is clearly the winner.
It's only partly hazelnut.
So what ends up happening is, when you look at the preference ballot, Alice, as we saw last time, was the last choice for everyone else. Again, think of a scenario where there are multiple candidates and the vote is split, terribly split amongst multiple candidates, and, well, the candidate that people maybe hated the most ends up coming up top simply because that particular candidate, was able to get a plurality, which I'm going to define what a plurality is in a minute. So I'm going to pick like a state here. Let's pick, I don't want to pick like an obvious state. Let's go Ohio. Yeah, 2016 Ohio primary. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in a moment. There we go. I'm going to flip my camera over so you can see. Boom. No, it's not boom just yet, but boom. There we go. There is the Ohio primary. Now, in 2016, the Ohio primary took place pretty early. You can see John Kasich being the winner of the Ohio primary, taking all of the delegate count. It's just the way that the vote was kind of split up. But again, look at those candidates. John Kasich received 46.95% of the vote. Now, it may seem like, oh yeah, he had a really high percentage of the vote. Yes, but he did not have 50% or better. He didn't have 50% or better. Trump had 35%, Cruz had 13%, and the rest of it was split amongst all these other candidates, which most of them by that point had withdrawn. Just meh. Ooh, New Hampshire. I'll do New Hampshire. That's probably a better option. New Hampshire primary. There we go. 2016. Look at these results. Trump had 35%, Kasich had 15, Cruz had 11, Jeb Bush had 11, Marco Rubio had 10. The vote is split and split and split and split and split, and the person who ends up winning the primary only has a third of the vote. What about the people who didn't vote for that person? Their voices also, to an extent, deserve to be heard. They do. Just like in this case with Alice. 14 people voted for Alice. My calculator is in the other room because my kids were playing with it okay, I'm going to have to bring up a calculator in here. Yeah. But 14 divided by 37 is only 37.8% of the vote. What I'm trying to say is this. If you're going to go one vote, one person, the only quote-unquote fair way of determining that election is if the one vote, one person, that winner gets 50% or more of the vote. If they don't get a majority, which I'm going to be defining for you, of course, if they don't get a majority, then I'm sorry, one vote, one person is just not fair. I know a lot of people clamor for one vote, one person, especially when it comes to presidential elections. But I'm sorry, it's not fair. It just isn't. And this is a clear example of it. Look, Alice won. Hold on. Actually, hold on. I'll write a little note here, and I would like you to add these into your notes as well. But Alice wins with 37.8% of the vote. But again, Alice wins with 37.8% of the vote. Keep in mind that 62.2% of people hate Alice. That's a real-life scenario. So what does one do? Well, last class I introduced to you a different type of voting system known as the board account. So I want to define plurality, and I want to define board account, and then I want to introduce to you the next two types of voting systems that we are going to be doing. So first of all, let me give you a few definitions here. Well, if I could spell plurality. My goodness gracious, what is wrong with me today? Plurality. There we go. Plurality is, well, whoever has the most votes wins. That's literally what a plurality is. But I want to emphasize that a plurality is not necessarily a majority. A majority is when one person gets 50% plus of the votes. Now, I say 50% plus because technically, if two people split it 50-50, it's not really a majority. It's got to be 50% plus. Well, what is it plus? Well, it's 50% of the vote plus 1, technically, is if you want to put it that way. 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote plus 1 is 50% of the vote plus 1. 50% of the vote Yeah, because if there are 10 votes and I get 5 and my opponent gets 5, nobody has a majority, even though we both have 50% exactly. It has to be 50% plus. So typically they say 50% plus 1 is the common phrasing that they use. Last class, we also talked about the board account. Now, the board account works with a preference schedule in which first, second, third, etc. receive points based on a predetermined system. Most points wins. Now, just to kind of recap again what we did with the board account last time we basically decided, okay, let's give a first place vote 4 points. Let's give a second place vote 3 points, etc. Now, I say predetermined system. That's the system that we are determining for our Podunk, Nebraska mayoral vote. It doesn't have to be 4 points for first place, 3 points for second place, etc. You can have any type of point total that you desire. It just has to be predetermined before the vote. So, for example, in this case right here for Podunk, Nebraska, I didn't have to do 4 points, 3, 2, and 1. I could have, if we decided, it could have been 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, 0 point. It could have been 8, 4, 2, and 1. As long as you determine what those point values are beforehand, and then count up the points based on that board account system, then you're fine. That's a board account. Now, the way that we set it up, Boris, who actually had the least number of first place votes, ended up winning the board account. The board account is an interesting system. The board account is used in various aspects of voting, more specifically in sports, where they determine, like in the NBA and their award season, the Rookie of the Year, the MVP, things of that nature. They do a board account voting system to determine who wins. Some people consider it a better system than plurality because with a preference ballot, you can see, for example, Boris was the second choice on all of these ballots. On 24 of the 37 ballots, Boris was the second choice. Boris was never last place on anything. Boris just seems like a good choice. And yeah, Boris ended up winning our board account. You can see the video that we did last time. But the point of today is I want to introduce to you the last 2 system, or major systems, I should say. There's an infinite number of voting systems, but there's 2 other major systems that I would like to talk about. And the next one that we're going to be talking about is pairwise comparison. Pairwise comparison. Now, the way that pairwise comparison basically works is this. You look at head-to-head matchups, and I'm going to show you an example of that in a moment. You look at head-to-head matchups and award a point for each victory. Now, you'll see what I mean in a moment. Now, in some systems, they award 3 points for a victory. Again, it's a predetermined system. I'm going to award 1 point for a victory. In the event of a tie, you could award a half a point to each candidate. In the system where they do 3 points, they might award 1 point for a tie, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So let me show you how this works, and then let me show you the real-world equivalent. So for example, let's talk about Alice, because you have to see how this works before you understand how the head-to-head matchups work. If we're talking about Alice, we are going to compare Alice to all the other candidates and see who was preferred more often than not. If we compare Alice versus Boris, just Alice versus Boris, I'm going to look at each column here. In this column right here, Alice was preferred over Boris. You can see it, Alice first, Boris second, in 14 of those votes. 14 votes, Alice was preferred over Boris. If I look at the second column, clearly Boris in these votes is preferred over Alice. Boris is the preferred candidate. Again, I'm just looking at A versus B. Alice versus Boris. Look at Alice versus Boris here. Boris is preferred. Look at Alice versus Boris here. Boris is preferred. And same thing down here. Boris is preferred. In fact, 10, 8, 4, and 1 add up to 23. If you just compare Alice versus Boris, Boris would win that head-to-head matchup. Meaning, if there were no other candidates in the election, if Chris and Dave both dropped out, and it was just Alice and Boris, Boris would win. Now, I'll award the points afterwards, but let's do Alice versus Chris. Now, there's no surprise here. Same thing happens. And the only reason why this happens is because Alice is in last place for everyone else's ballot. Alice versus Chris, 14 for Alice. Alice versus Chris, Chris wins. Alice versus Chris, Alice versus Chris, Alice versus Chris. It's the same point total. In fact, if it was just Alice versus Chris, Chris would win. If it was Alice versus Dave, same scenario. The real interesting thing happens when you do the other matchups, Boris and Chris and Dave, etc. But look at this. Alice ends up winning the plurality. Alice has the most first place votes. However, when you do a head-to-head matchup of just Alice versus Boris, Alice loses. If you do Alice versus Chris, Alice loses. If you do Alice versus Dave, Alice loses. Again, I emphasize the fact the only reason Alice wins a plurality is because the rest of the vote was split amongst the other candidates. Not that it would ever happen in real life, as it has. Let's look at Boris versus Chris. Now, this is where we actually do have... I mean, it's not going to be the same vote total here, but let's just see. Boris versus Chris. If you look at Boris versus Chris, Boris is preferred in these 14 ballots. Boris versus Chris, Chris is preferred in these 10 ballots. Chris is preferred here in 8 ballots. Boris is preferred here in 4 ballots. And Chris is preferred here in 1 ballot. So, let's see. 10, 8, and 1. It's in these 3 columns right here that Chris was preferred over Boris. That's 19 of the ballots. So, in 19 ballots, Chris is preferred. And if you add it up for the remaining ballots, it would be 18 remaining ballots for Boris. If you do Chris versus Boris on a head-to-head matchup, Chris just ekes it out. If you do Boris versus Dave, well, let's see. Boris versus Dave. Boris. So that's 24 so far. Dave has 8. Boris again, that's 4 more. That's 28 votes. And Dave is 1. So Dave is only preferred over Boris in these 9 ballots, actually. Dave over Boris. So let's see, that would be 28 to 9. Boris would clearly win that one. Then finally we have to do Chris versus Dave. We have to do every matchup. Pairwise comparison, you're looking at head-to-head matchups and award a point for each victory, which will award the points in a moment. Let's do Chris versus Dave. Chris versus Dave. Chris, clearly. Chris. Dave. Dave. And Chris. Okay. So Dave would win that head-to-head matchup 12 times, and it looks like Chris would win that matchup 25 times. We look at head-to-head matchups, and we award a point for each victory. Well, let's see. Boris gets a point there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to have to keep a point total over here. And this is typically what people do. They keep like a little tally chart. So let's see. Boris gets a victory there. Chris gets a victory here. Dave gets a victory here. Chris gets a victory here. Boris gets a victory here. And Chris gets a victory here. Pairwise comparison. Chris wins. Pairwise comparison. This is really insane, though, because the voting systems that I am showing you are actually among the most common voting systems that are out there. Plurality is one vote, one person. That's what people typically think, well, that's fair. I'm here to tell you, no, it's not. And I'll give you a reason for that in a little bit. In terms of board account, Boris won. He won barely, but he still won, because board account takes into account your placement on the preference ballot for all of everyone's vote. But then pairwise comparison, and you're like, well, Mr. Markey, like, where in the world would we find a pairwise comparison example in the real world? You know, it's like, it's not like that would ever, you know, be put into practice. And then, of course, I'm here to tell you, yes, it does. You know, or it is, I should say. Just trying to find the last one here. Is this it? There we go, I found it. Okay, good, good, good. Let me switch my camera over. Chapow! Switch, there we go. Look at the World Cup. Let's look at the World Cup, ladies and gentlemen. If I look at the World Cup, what ends up happening in the World Cup? Well, each team is broken up into groups. And when they are in their groups, I'm just going to go down to the part that has the groups. There we go. When they're in their groups, each team plays each other once. And you can see that right here. Let me get my little picture out of the way here. Make myself a bit smaller here. Woo, there we go. Good. Each team plays each other once. Actually, no, I can just leave myself like that. So in this group, you have Uruguay, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. Well, look right here. Russia played Saudi Arabia. Let me show you right here. You have Russia played Saudi Arabia, and Russia won. And because Russia won, I believe they received 3 points for that victory. Then Egypt played Uruguay, and Uruguay won. So Uruguay received 3 points for that victory. Then Russia played Egypt, and Russia won. Then Uruguay played Saudi Arabia, and Uruguay won. And Uruguay played Russia, and Uruguay won. And then Saudi Arabia played Egypt, and Saudi Arabia won. Every team played each other once in a head-to-head matchup. And that's how they determined who won that particular group. Let me go to a group where it was like a tie. There we go. Here we go. Good, good. This is a good one. Well, actually, no. Let me go to a better one. A tie in points, actually. I don't think there was one this year. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Group H. Group H. Okay. So, of course, there are tiebreakers. In this one, Japan beat Colombia, and then Senegal beat Poland. And I'm trying to get to the Japan-Senegal thing. There it is. Japan-Senegal tied at 2-2. It's like, well, what's the tiebreaker? Oh, there you go. Fair play points. See, typically the first tiebreaker would be head-to-head matchup. And then they would have to have a second tiebreaker, which in this case they could do, you know. There is a scenario in the board account where, you know, unfortunately you would not be able to figure out what the tie-breaking procedure would be. But in our instance, it just works. Chris wins. Yay. There is a fourth voting method that I would like to talk about. And then I'll kind of compare all these. I'm going to show you what the application of all of it is. The fourth voting method that I'm going to be talking about is plurality with elimination, also known in some cases as instant runoff. Now, there is a definitive real-life example that just happened in America. Let me find the exact results of such. It was in the Georgia Senate election. They didn't do an instant runoff, but they did a runoff. There it is. I'll flip my camera over in a moment. But they did a runoff in order to do this. Now, if you look at the right side, where on the right side it says Jon Ossoff and David Perdue, you can see first round and then runoff. Now, the general idea of a runoff is this. There is a preliminary voting, and if a winner cannot be determined, then everyone has to vote again. Now, in real life, you would have to obviously physically go back in and vote again. Let me go to the first round here. Where's the first round? That's the polling results. Here we go. No, that was the runoff. There we go. Results. Good. So right here, if you can see that right there, the way that the runoff worked in Georgia is this. They have laws in Georgia which state that if you're going to do this election, you have to have 50% of the vote for the Senate race, let's say. So David Perdue received 49.73% of the vote. He did not get 50% of the vote, or 50% plus 1. Now you can see Libertarian Shane Hazel got 2.32% of the vote. Now, if those 2.32% of the vote could be then re-voted for Perdue or Ossoff, then perhaps one of them would have received 50%. So, when they went back for the runoff election, you can see that right here, you can see there's no third party now. Because that third party, that Libertarian Hazel, was eliminated. And when he was eliminated, those people who, went back in, they had to vote for one or the other. This kind of goes hand in hand with the theme of all of these voting systems. There is no fair voting system unless you have two candidates, and only two candidates. I'm going to repeat that, and then I'm going to write it down later. There is no fair voting system unless you have two candidates, and only two candidates. That is a fact. Let's do plurality with elimination here. Plurality with elimination, or instant runoff. And the reason why it's instant is because people don't have to go back in and vote again. Because, hey, because of the preference ballot, we already know what they want. Here's what I mean. In the first round of voting, and in fact, I'm going to do this here, instant runoff. First round, Alice got 14 first-place votes. Boris got 4 first-place votes. Chris got 11 first-place votes. And Dave received 8 first-place votes. In the first round of voting, you look at the number of first-place votes in plurality with elimination. Now, clearly, Alice has a plurality, but this is plurality with elimination. Boris is eliminated. And the reason why Boris is eliminated is because Boris has the lowest number of first place votes. So we go to a second round. Well, I was wondering, how many rounds do we go to? Well, you go as many rounds as you need to until one of two things happen. Number one candidate has over 50% of the vote. Or number two, you only have two candidates left. Now, since Boris is being eliminated, where do all of Boris's votes go? Well, Boris's votes, those 4 people who voted for Boris, they still have a voice. And their voice is going to Dave. So those 4 votes are now being inherited by Dave. So in the second round, Alice still has 14, Chris still has 11, and now Dave, who has inherited those votes according to the preference schedule, now has 12. Well, clearly, we still don't have a majority. We still don't have 50% plus 1. Chris is eliminated. And because Chris is eliminated, we have to go to a third round of voting. But who gets Chris's votes? Well, in those 11 votes, when Chris was eliminated, one of them went to Dave. Okay. And the other 10 went to Boris. Oh, wait. Boris was already eliminated. Which means Dave gets those votes as well. Dave inherits all 11 of those votes as a result of knowing what this preference ballot looks like. And because Dave inherits those 11 votes, Dave is declared your winner. Let me just recap something with you real quick before I get to the definition that I'm referring to. One vote, one person is plurality. Alice won. Board account is when you assign point values to a first place vote, a second place vote, a third place vote, etc. Boris won the board account. Pairwise comparison, you look at head-to-head matchups. Chris won the pairwise comparison. Plurality with elimination, instant runoff, Dave won. These are 4 valid systems of voting. I have to sneeze. Here, give me a second. I'm going to mute myself. I really hope that sneeze did not come through. I muted myself. I really hope I did correctly. Someone tell me if they heard my sneeze in their ears and it hurt their ears. Anyway. Sorry. 4 valid systems of voting. 4 completely different winners. I want to look up right now where we see plurality with elimination. Now, obviously, I just showed you one in the 2020 Georgia runoff election. But they also, if I can find it here, there it is. Good. Come on, where's the system? I gotta find the system first here. And they don't have it, so I'm gonna have to get back. There it is. I found it. Good. Website. There we go. I found it. Excuse me. I'm not feeling great today. But you can see right here. Here's the 2020 Summer Olympic bid system. Right here. And you can see in the first round, 42 people voted for Japan of the Olympic Committee, the International Olympic Committee, and the rest split their vote amongst Turkey and Spain. There had to be a runoff between Turkey and Spain, and Turkey was allowed to move on. And then everyone got to revote one more time, and then Japan ended up being the winner. This is an example of plurality with elimination. Just a perfect example. Let me actually go back to 2016 and find the bid system here, bidding process. There's another good one right there. Brazil, Spain, Japan, and the United States. This is 2016. And they had the first round. Oh, here we go. Now, the first round's right here, this column. And it looks like the United States was eliminated. And then they did the second round, and Japan was eliminated. And then they did the third round. And then Brazil was awarded the 2016 Olympics. That's how they do it. That's how they do it. Plurality with elimination. Here's a definition for you. This is a principle within voting systems. And this principle is so important, I'm going to put a star on it. I don't put many stars on my notes, so when I do, you better believe that is an important, important, important thing. If a vote has 3 or more candidates, there is no fair system of voting. There is no fair system of voting. Now, I'm going to be getting into these details in future class periods in terms of certain principles and that we're going to get into. I'm not going to get into them today. I just wanted to give kind of an overview as to what this whole thing was. But if a vote has 3 or more candidates, there is no fair system of voting. None. You can't do it. If you have 3 or more candidates, it's been proven there is no fair system of voting. Furthermore, addendum, only if one candidate receives 50% plus of the vote, could we consider fairness? Only if one candidate receives 50+% of the vote could we consider fairness. That's a majority. Clearly, if somebody receives 50% or more of the vote, yeah, it's fair to consider them to be the winner. And if they don't end up being the winner, then perhaps something has gone wrong. Now, I bring you back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2016 presidential election. In 2016, we had a scenario, and I'll show you, the 2000 election as well. But in 2016, again, regardless of what your politics are, I don't care what your politics are, but this is a perfect way of displaying this. One might argue, Mr. Markey, look, there were 2 candidates. Clearly, this should have been fair. Well, I bring you to the percentages. Look at those percentages right there. Did either one of them get 50% plus of the vote? Nope. Neither one of them received 50+% of the vote. And if you go to the actual results of the election right here, as I showed last class, look at all these candidates. Gary Johnson, 4.5 million. Jill Stein, 1.5 million. Evan McMullen, 750,000 votes. Those votes made up the difference. The reason why it's not considered fair, is because the rest of the vote is being split. Let me look back actually at the 2000 election. 2000 president election. By the way, just for a side note, just as a side note, I don't know if you know this or not, or if I've ever shared this with you, but in the 2016 presidential election, there was one vote cast for James Markey. There was. I swear to you. It is official. It is in the 2016 presidential Ocean County registrar information. It's all there. There is one vote in 2016. I'll have to find the PDF because I have the PDF somewhere. It'd be great if I could find that. But there is one vote cast for none other than James Markey. And I did not cast it. My friend casted it. For funsies. No, he actually, it wasn't just for funsies. He told me specifically that the reason why he voted for me was because I was the only candidate that he trusted. Or something along those lines. I'm trying to see if I can find the PDF of the election from 2016, see if I can show that to you. No, I'll have to find it and download it later. Anyway, look at the 2000 election. George W. Bush, Al Gore. This was one of the closest elections of all time. You can see, again, neither one of them got 50% plus of the vote. And if you look at the results, going down here, you can see Ralph Nader, 2.8 million. Pat Buchanan, 500,000. Harry Brown, over a quarter of a million or something like that. But all of those votes make up the difference. All of them make up the difference between the two. If it was only down to 2 candidates, then yes, perhaps we can consider that to be fair. But it's not 2 candidates. It's just not. Here's another good example. This is the last presidential election one I'll show you. Today, that is. 1992. Bill Clinton, Bush, Perot. Look at that. Again, 43%, 37%, 18.9%. Well, I wonder, what would the election have looked like had Ross Perot not run? What if it was just down to 2 people? And that's part of it. That's part of the issue. See if we can find, here we go, the detailed results. He received 20 million votes. What if those votes were split amongst the rest of the candidates? What would have happened? Well, unfortunately, we're never going to know. Oh, my top down. Oh, no, it's top down. There we go. Unfortunately, we're never going to know. We're never going to know. Because we don't have preference ballots. If we had preference ballots, then perhaps, we would now have a system of voting that would be fair. Because then we could see, like, okay, well, what would happen if this guy... And perhaps we can go through multiple systems of voting to see who would have eventually won. But again, it's the system we work with. See, it's part of the reason why we have a 2-party system in America. Some people hate the 2-party system in America. They do. They hate it. And it's not perfect. It's not. It's not perfect because there's no fair system of voting if you have 3 or more candidates. But the 2-party system does attempt to break it down where you get a majority. Now, even in the case of, 2016 election and the 2000 election and things of that nature, when you break that down, yeah, nobody got 50% of the vote. But someone did receive 50% of the Electoral College. The Electoral College, we're going to study that eventually, is not the perfect system. I'm going to talk about that briefly in a moment. It's not the perfect system. But it's the system that we have in place. And as we talked about last class, if they agree on the system of voting beforehand, then you can't complain about the system of voting afterwards. It's simply put. When we talked about Alice, I'll show this right here, when we talked about Alice winning the plurality, despite the fact that 62.2% of people hated Alice, well, I'm sorry, if you decided that plurality was the way to go, then Alice is your winner. The system has to be changed beforehand in order for it to be fair. The system has to be changed beforehand in order for it to be fair. Just for the sake of argument, a brief rundown of the Electoral College. The Electoral College is run in such a way where each state is given a certain number of electoral votes. For example, and I'll look this up. I want to make sure I get this right. I believe New Jersey is 14, but I got to double check that. Oop, there it is. Hold on. New Jersey, 14, yes. And the reason why New Jersey has 14 is because we have 12 representatives to the House and 2 senators. 12 plus 2 is 14. Yay. 14 electoral votes. Whoever ends up winning the plurality of votes in New Jersey is then, well, technically not awarded. This is how the system actually works. Whoever wins the plurality of votes. For example, in New Jersey, it was Joe Biden, the Democrats. Then, Democratic electors are then allowed to cast their vote like a month later. You're not voting for the candidate. You're actually voting for the elector to cast their vote for you. It's a weird system. But it's the system that we have in place. And if people don't like it, then they have to vote to change it. But you have to be very clear on the system of voting before the election. You cannot just change the rules during or after. You can't. That would be a gross misconduct and unethical, to say the least. So, what's in store for us? Today's Tuesday. I have you again on Thursday. Hopefully Thursday we'll be back in class and I'll have all of my supplies. On Thursday, we're going to get some practice with these 4 systems of voting. We're going to get some practice with preference ballots. We're going to get some practice with weird scenarios that come into play, depending on the system of voting that happens. We're going to do all of that on Thursday. Until then, I'm going to wrap this up for today. And thank you guys for joining us on this weird day. Personally, I think we'll be back on Thursday. I don't know about tomorrow. It's supposed to be snowing, like, for 12 hours today, or some junk like that. So I really don't know what's going to happen. I really don't know. But we'll see. We shall see. In the meantime, I am going to bid you adieu. Thank you for joining me, and I will give you the permission to leave. If you have not left a comment in the chat, I would ask you to do that. For my records. And if you haven't joined the Google Classroom, please make sure that you do so. Because I do see 3 people, one who was here today, that has not joined the Google Classroom. Alright. Thank you guys. And bye-bye. Take your stuff. Go. Leave. You can leave the room now. Go. Go away. Bye. See ya. Auf Wiedersehen. Okay, bye.